Hey everyone, my name is Sean. Today I'm going to be showing you how to display your inventory live on your website. So let's take a look. Here I've selected small and blue, and we can see that I have 65 available and I have a heart-faced emoji. If I change my selection here, I'm out of stock with a sad face. Here I have only 5 left with a shocked face, and I can do this however many times I like. And so let's jump in and see how we can create this ourselves. I also wanted to point out that we're almost at 250 subscribers on the channel. I really appreciate everyone's support, and if these videos are helpful to you and you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The inventory quantities that we're going to be displaying on our website come straight from the back end on our Shopify product pages. If we scroll down, we can see all of these variants have inventory quantities, and this is the data that's displayed on our website. So let's see how we can pull this data and display it on our front end. As always, let's create a duplicate of our live theme. In this case, I'm using Dawn. Let's go to Actions, Duplicate. From there, I've renamed my duplicate Live Inventory Quantity, and then let's go to Actions and edit the code for that theme. Once we're in the code editor, I want to point out that there's typically a very large JavaScript file. In Dawn's case, the file is called global.js. And typically when you're adding a functionality like we're going to be adding today, you would do so in this file. But because this file varies from theme to theme, and not everyone is going to be using Dawn, we're instead going to be adding the inventory quantity functionality completely from scratch and straight to the product page file. So let's go up to our search bar and type in product. We're going to be looking for a template file called product, and if you're on a newer theme, it will end in .json. If you're on an older Shopify theme, it will end in .liquid. But then from here, it'll tell us to go to a main-product file. So in our sections folder, we can find that main-product. And within this file, we're going to be able to find our add to cart button, which is the location right above that button that I'm going to add my inventory counter. So if we go and right click and open a new tab, our preview, I'm going to go to my catalog and my products. So right here on the product page, if we either right click and inspect on this button, or if you're on Chrome, you can press Control-Shift-C, and from there you'll be able to select different elements. I'm going to select my add to cart element, and I'm going to go up a little bit in the hierarchy on the side here. And right here I see a data type of add to cart form, and I'm guessing this is pretty unique, this text. So I'm going to copy this text, and from there I'm going to search for it in my main-product file. So I found it here, and this is the only occurrence of that text. So I know I'm in the right spot. And to be sure, I'm going to go right after this when statement here and add the text test. I'm going to save that file. And then when I refresh my preview, we have our test text right here. So we know we're in the right spot, and this is the exact location I want to add my live inventory counter. So I'm going to delete this test text, and in its place we're going to put our logic. Remember, in Shopify's liquid language, we do opening curly bracket, %sign, closing curly bracket, and that denotes logic. So if we look for the product object in the official Shopify documentation, we're going to be using an attribute called product.selected or first available variant. So I'm going to copy this, and here I'm going to say if the product that's selected or the variant that's selected, and I want to also get the inventory quantity. So this just leads us to a variant object, so I'm going to click there. And within the variant object, we can actually get the inventory quantity right here. So I'm going to copy this. So if the inventory quantity of the selected variant is less than or equal to 0, then let's do something. So I'm going to say, in this case, I'm going to print out a paragraph, and I'm going to simply say out of stock. And I'm going to also do a sad face emoji. And I'm going to give this paragraph a class as well of live inventory count. And let's not forget to close our if statement with an if. I want to add a bit more logic to my if statement, so below my paragraph I'm going to add an else if, and also be careful, in this liquid language there is no E in else if, so just be careful of that. And I'm also going to add one more else statement as well. This else if statement is going to check whether the inventory is 10 or less. So So I'm going to copy this logic up here and change it up a bit. So let's paste that here. So if the inventory quantity is greater than 0, and if the inventory quantity is less than or equal to 10. So this way I want to show a message here that gives the customer some urgency. So I'm going to copy this paragraph up here, paste it here, and I'm just going to change up the wording to say only 7 left, just to give them a sense of urgency. And I'm also going to change out this emoji to be a shocked face, surprise. And we don't want this to always say 7, for example, though, because we want it to actually display how many are left in real time. So we're going to copy our variable here. And in this place of this 7, we're going to paste that. And in order to call that, we actually have to wrap that variable inside curly brackets. And we'll save that. And then finally, for our else statement, the last option, this will just display if the inventory is greater than 10. So I want to do a paragraph here, and we're going to do blank are available. And I want to do my heart face emoji. There we go. And let's save that. And now when we go back to the product page and refresh, we can see that we have 65 available. Now if we change our variant, we'll notice though that nothing happens. The only way this updates is if we actually refresh the page. So 88 available, out of stock, and let's see this one, only 5 left. So it's working, but it's not working when we change our variant, only when we select, when we refresh our page. So let's get that functionality working. I've zoomed in a little bit here so we can see a bit clearer what I'm doing. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom of our file and go right above our schema tag and give ourselves a little bit of room, we're going to enter an opening and closing script tag. And within that, we're going to create our own custom object that holds our variants. So Shopify already has, if we look back at the documentation, within their product object, they already have an attribute that allows us to get our product variants, and you can see that it returns an array of the product's variants. So we're going to be using that to create our own object to hold our variant data so that we can pull from it in real time. So let's create a variable here. So variable custom variant object, and let's for now set that equal to an empty object. I've written some code here that's commented out just to explain what we're going to populate our empty object with. So our custom variant object is going to be populated with the content from this opening curly bracket to this closing curly bracket. And within that object, we're going to have a key value pair of our variant ID. So we have a bunch of variant IDs, and the values those keys pertain to are actually other objects. So we're nesting other objects within our object. And within that, we're going to have our inventory quantity that we can store, but we can also store other things such as SKU, title, and a bunch of other things. But in this case, we're only really wanting to get our inventory quantity. So let's populate this custom variant object. So we're going to loop through all of our variants and push that data into this variant object. So to do that, let's do a for loop. So for variants in product.variants. Let's close our for loop. And within that, we're going to create our keys, which are our variant IDs. So custom variant object. And we're going to do the notation for this is brackets, and then we have our liquid logic again, so 2 curly brackets, 2 curly brackets, and we're also going to even add some dashes in between here so that we get rid of any white space. And all we're going to call is our variant ID, so var ID, and we're going to set that equal to inventory quantity. We're going to do another liquid variable here, var inventory quantity. And I'm also going to give this, just to be safe, a default value of 0. Save that. So if we copy this variable name and go back to our preview and refresh, and we paste that variable name into our console and press enter, we can see that we have all of our variant IDs And within that, we have an object of our inventory quantities. So we can pull the data we need now to make this update in real time. I'm going to clean up this a little bit here by adding a semicolon and fixing the spacing. I want to show you something on our live theme here. If we open our console and type in window.location.search and press enter, you'll see here our output variant equals and then followed by the variant ID. And this exact string here is exactly what's in our URL bar up above. And if we change our variant ID, native to all Shopify themes pretty much, is when you change your variant, the URL also updates. So we're going to be using this feature to check whether a variant has been changed. And if it's been changed, we then know to update this text down here. So I'm going to select a different variant here. The URL has changed to this, ending in a 7.6. Now if I type this code over here, you'll see this is the one that ends in 7.6, and it's different than the previous one. And we did all of this without having to refresh the page. So what I want to do is create variables that hold our old variant and our new variant ID and compare the two and check to see whether or not they have changed. So we're going to create a variable that holds our old variant ID. So let's first create a variable that holds the entire URL after the question mark, including the question mark. So const old query string equals window.location.search. Then we're going to create an interface to actually interact with that and manipulate those query strings. And then from there, we're only going to get the query that is called variant. Save that. And now if we copy this old variant ID variable and paste that into our console, we're only left with the variant ID, and we don't have any of that other preceding text. I also want to make sure that no matter what type of selector I'm using for my variants, that this code will work. So in my case, I'm using the pill button selector, but in your theme, you might be using the drop-down selector. So in order for that to work, we need to make sure our variant selector, no matter what type it is wrapped in a container that we can detect changes on. So let's select our variant selector area, and in this case, the closest one I can find is variant-radios. So I'm going to copy that text and search for it within our code. And within our code, I found this element here. And had my theme been using the drop-down selector, instead of rendering this element here, I would have rendered this variant selects theme. So your theme may be rendering this instead. So to make sure no matter which one we're using, the code will work, we need to wrap this entire container in another div. In my case, I'm going to start the div up here, right after the when statement. And the closing div will be right before the next when statement here. And I'm also going to call that div that we just created here. Where did it go? I'm going to give that a class name of variant selector element. Back at the bottom of our file with our JavaScript, let's create another variable called const variant selector element. And let's set that equal to the element we just created that we just wrapped our variant selectors in. So document.querySelector. And the class we called it was variant selector element. And then let's take that variable and add an event listener. And check for change events. And when we detect a change event, we'll run a certain function. Save that. And in this case, in between that function, let's just write console.log and I've changed. Oh, I have changed. Save that. Go back to our code. And now, if we refresh our page and we change our variant, in the console, we will see I have changed, and it continues outputting. The counter keeps going up, meaning it keeps displaying that text. So we have that working. Remember before I mentioned that I wanted to create a variable that will hold our old variant ID and a variable that will hold our new variant ID. So all we're going to do is copy this code we have up here for our old variant ID, and in between our opening and closing curly brackets for this function, I'm going to paste that in, and instead I'm just going to rename all of these variables to new. So new query string, new URL params, new variant ID, and also make sure you change their calls within here as well. New and new. Save that, and I'm actually going to copy this console.log text as well, paste it down below, and instead the variable we're going to put in here is new variant ID. Paste that and save. And back in our theme, if we change the variant, we can see here that text is being output and the variant ID of the new variant we've selected. So 5.6, and that's the one that we see in the URL, 5.6. Let's select a new one, 2.4 and 2.4. And so that's working quite well. Next, let's compare our old variant ID and our new variant ID. And if they're different, that means that someone on our website has selected a new variant. So below our console log here and still within our function, let's create an if statement. So if our new variant ID is not equal to our old variant ID, we're going to set our old variant ID equal to our new variant ID. And then right above this console.log, let's also add another. And just to show that this is working, we're going to put our old variant ID. And to make it even clearer, I'm going to add some text here. Plus there. And this here. And make this new. And now when we save this and go back to our website, we can see our current variant ID ends in 7.6. When I select my next one, we can see that the old one ends in 7.6. My new one ends in 4.4, which is correct with our URL. And we can keep doing this, so functionally this is working pretty well. All that's left to do now is to update this text based on a new variant selection. So let's go back to our code, and if you remember back in the beginning of the video, we created those paragraphs and we gave them all the class of live inventory count. So let's copy that class name, live inventory count, go back down to our JavaScript, and within our if statement here, let's create a new variable, let live inventory count equal document.querySelector all, and make sure it's query selector all and not just query selector. Save that. Then we'll create a for loop. And all this will do is check for more than one instance of this live inventory count class. In our case, we only have it rendering once, so only one of the possibilities will render on our website. But if you want to copy this entire section and place it somewhere else within this file, this will make sure it captures all of those classes and updates the text for every single one. All that's left to do now is within this for loop is to replicate the logic we put up here for our paragraphs and put it down below in JavaScript format. So let's start that. Our first if statement, we checked for the inventory quantity being less than or equal to 0. So let's do that here in JavaScript. So if, and we're going to check for our custom variant object that we created here. So if that, we're going to use a new variant ID. And remember, our last variable we saved was the inventory quantity. We're going to copy that up here. Dot inventory quantity is less than or equal to 0. Then I'm going to set the content of the live inventory count paragraph. So live inventory count, and we're going to make sure we select the right one because we're looping through everything. And dot inner HTML is equal to, and in this case I'm not going to do quotations, I'm going to do backticks, and backticks are right above your tab key on your keyboard. And we'll say in between that, out of stock, and I'll do my sad face emoji, and make sure I close off with a semicolon. Next, we had an else if statement where we checked if the inventory quantity was less than or equal to 10, but greater than 0. So I'm going to copy this if statement and paste it below and say else if, and else if it's greater than 0, and 2 ampersand signs, and I'm going to copy that again. It's greater than or less than or equal to 10. And then in this case, I'm going to set the text to, what was it? Only 7 left. And I had my shocked face. But in place of the 7, we're going to put our variable. So I'm going to copy this variable above. And in JavaScript, in this notation I'm using here, we wrap our variables with a $sign and then 1 curly bracket and another curly bracket, and within that we put our variable. So we can save that. And the final one was an else statement. So let's copy this else if statement, paste it down below, and we can get rid of everything after the word else. And we just wanted to display, I think it was just however many inventory is available. And I had my heart eyes emoji. And save that. And that's everything. If we go back to our website and we change our variant selections, we'll see that our text here is now updating immediately, which is awesome. So this will really help answer questions your customers might have about stock level, and like I said before, give a sense of urgency when the stock levels are running low. So all that's left to do now is we can get rid of these console.logs by either deleting them or commenting them out. I'll just delete mine here, save that, and now when I change them, my console is clear and it's not making it all messy. So that's everything. Hopefully this live inventory counter helps increase your store's conversion rate. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.